So today's topic is going to be the working Hispanic. Again, we have decided to do this event in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. So we have a few speakers here with us today. We have Dr. Valderas, we have Crystal, and we have Rodrigo. So we're going to go ahead and start off with a brief little introduction. We'll have the speakers kind of introduce themselves, and let's get started.
Crystal, please start.
Okay, Dr. Valderas. All right, so my name is Crystal Garcia. I graduated from University of St. Thomas in 2017, and I am currently a teacher. I am going on my 4th year of teaching. I teach 7th grade, and I actually teach at the same middle school I attended years ago. So my classroom used to be, or the classroom that I'm teaching at used to be my old classroom. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, but I love teaching. And currently I am at Texas A&M University, getting my master's in education and getting my principal certification. So hopefully by the end of December, I will graduate and I'll have that principal certification.
Woo.
That's a little bit about me.
Rodrigo, please go ahead. Unmute yourself, Rodrigo. Yeah.
Can everybody see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. My name is Rodrigo Vega. I'm a recent international studies graduate from UST. Currently, I am working as a translator. I am working also for my foreign service test. I'm planning to be a diplomat as one of my goals. And also I am planning to get my master's in diplomacy and strategic affairs at UST as well. I was born in Mexico in San Luis Potosí, but I have lived all my life in Texas. I arrived at Austin when I was 1 year old. I lived in Austin for 17 years, and then I moved to Houston in 2011, and I've been here ever since.
Joseph.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. Thank you, Rodrigo and Crystal.
Sorry.
And thank you, Brianna, for the invitation, and of course to all the board members. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ulises Valderas. Some of you already have met me as a professor. And well, I was born in Mexico, and I did basically all my studies until college in Mexico City. I was born in Monterrey, but my parents moved to Mexico City when I was 2. So I grew up in Mexico City, where I went to school, elementary, middle, high school, and college. I moved to the US in 1997 after a couple of years of working experience at the Mexican government. I moved to Colorado, where I did my master's in economics and my PhD in economics. After 7 years in Boulder, Colorado, in grad school, I faced the big decision of coming back to my country, to Mexico, or to stay here in the US. And somehow, somewhere in grad school, I was attracted by academia. So I decided that I wanted to be a professor. And at that time, I remember very well that I thought, well, coming back to Mexico in academia, if then I want to go back to the US, is going to be very, very difficult. So I decided to apply to many, many universities, and only one school called me. I was lucky enough to get an offer from them. That was Sam Houston State University. So I moved in 2004 to not to Huntsville because nothing against Huntsville, but because also my wife needed a job, so we thought that probably something in the middle between Huntsville and Houston would be good. So we moved to the Woodlands, and and I was there for 7 years. And then I applied to a position in 2011. So this is when I started at UST, and I have been part of the Center for International Studies since 2011, and I am very happy here at UST. And well, I guess that's part of my story.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you, Dr. Valderas. All right. So we went ahead and did our little introduction. So let's go ahead and get into this topic. Alrighty. So the first topic that we are going to sort of discuss, and again, this is open to all students as well to engage, but like we mentioned, please wait until the speaker is done speaking. So our first topic is going to be, do you believe that being a minority in this country affects our education and career?
Crystal, do you want to start?
Who goes first? Anybody can go first?
I can go first. I do believe it. I didn't realize it until I was at St. Thomas. And it was more like a cultural shock for me because I was a minority, and my whole my whole life as a child, I've been in school since elementary all the way to high school where the majority was Hispanic. And I didn't realize that until I went to St. Thomas and I saw all of these people from different countries. And I was like, wow, I'm not with my people. And I missed my first year at St. Thomas. I missed being in El Barrio, and I was so upset because I couldn't fit in as a Latina woman. And sure enough, I found my way through St. Thomas, but it did affect me because a lot of my kids, a lot of my students, they don't realize that there's a world outside of El Barrio. And again, I teach 7th grade, and majority of them are Hispanic, and majority of them are in the same boat as I was. Low income, sometimes single parents. So we were all like, they all knew each other and they all felt comfortable because we were with the same people. And I know that whenever they go out into the real world and they go to any university, they're going to feel like, wow, I really don't belong, or I cannot find my own people. So yes, it affects education, but in a sense that you feel like there's a shock and you feel like you won't be able to relate to other people, especially that first year transitioning from high school to college. So yeah, that's my little thing.
Rodrigo, go ahead.
I think it does affect, and it does matter, because as a minority, and especially as a Hispanic, specifically as a Mexican immigrant, you have your own experience, which is very different from other people from other backgrounds. Even among Mexican immigrants, the experience vary. But you have your own viewpoint and your own worldview, and yes, you can feel like you sometimes like there's something different about you. You know, sometimes you forget about it and then it comes back as a reminder to haunt you. But one way I found to deal with it, say that this is something that defines me, that makes me unique, and something that I can contribute to society. You never know if your own experience, your own worldview can actually make a difference in society in Houston or even the United States itself. So that's my take on it, and how I felt, how I dealt with it, and especially moving from Austin to Houston, I noticed a huge difference. In Austin, it was particularly the time I lived there. It was mostly noticed it was mostly Anglo, some Hispanic. Most people did not want to speak Spanish, or if they did know Spanish, they were reluctant to speak it. When I moved to Houston, I noticed a huge difference in diversity, and a lot of people were more open in acknowledging they knew Spanish and that they spoke Spanish. And so that made it easier, especially in school, to kind of fit in and to not feel different. So that was my experience.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Well, okay, I do think that yes, education is absolutely important, right? So the question is, do you believe that being a minority in this country affects our education and our careers? And the answer is yes, absolutely, right? So we really need to, well, first of all, I don't think there are the same opportunities for Hispanics versus other other peer people, could be students or applicants in a particular job. And this is why it is important and essential to pursue an education. And I think, in Houston, of course, being the most diverse city in the US, is a reflection of that, in particular UST, right? So I am always very, very happy to see uh, many students that are from Hispanic origin. I think right now our freshman class had close to 40% of students from Hispanic origin. And that's great, right? So why? Because that's exactly what we need. We need to educate the people that are here, and we should provide equal opportunities to all of them. And again, the only way that we can be considered for jobs, for positions, is first of all with an education, right? So we need to get that minimum level of education. And I know that many many of our students, they are first generation students, so that they are the first one in their family that go to college, which even which makes it even more challenging for them, right? Why? Because they don't have the support necessarily from their families, because sometimes their families, they don't understand exactly what does it entail. And yes, I mean, their parents could be, yes, okay, I will support you in any way I can. Um, but it is hard, right? So it is hard when you don't have anyone that has been in college to give you an advice, to give you the support that you might need. And this is why we try to focus on those people, those students here, and offer them that support that they might be lacking at home. right? So we have advisors, faculty advisors, we have professors, and you know, sometimes students, they are also reluctant to see one of us. And it is important to have that support, right? Why? Because everybody needs that at some point. I have been in that situation, right? Right now, of course, I am a faculty member, but being a faculty member and having a job right now doesn't mean that I am not struggling with things in my life, right? So I also have a family, I have children, I have things that I live every day. And sometimes I need the support of someone, right? So it is important that you guys, students, that you know that you can get that support here at UST. Um, and even more now in this pandemic time, right? That is just messing everything up. So, but bottom line, yes, education is very important, and I would like to encourage you guys to, of course, complete your undergrad studies, but also to go to grad school, right? Because we really need to, as a community, as these people from Hispanic origin, we need to also shine in this society, right? So we need to get to the point that other people, other demographic groups are reaching. And the only way that we can do that is with education, right? Or that's a very important way. You know what I mean? People from Hispanic background, and again, I mean, I am just focusing on the people from Hispanic background. I am not saying that other demographic groups they do or they don't, but I know that you know, immigrant families, because at the end of the day, although some of you have already been born here in the US, or as Rodrigo was saying, he arrived here when he was 1 year old. Um, but either we migrated, or our parents migrated, or our grandparents migrated to this country. And why did they migrate? Looking for better opportunities, right? Why? Because in this country, if you work hard, there's a reward for working hard, being honest and to work hard. Mhm. And that's exactly something that I see in this big Hispanic community, right? So this big heart, we are very warm with people, right? But we are hard workers, right? Now we need to step up also in the education arena, right? And we need to prepare ourselves, right? Because nowadays, you know, now you need to have a college degree, right? Even more. 20 years ago, yeah, with a college degree, it was okay. But now you guys need to start thinking in grad school at some point in your life, right? And that's the way that it should be. So yes, education is a key factor, and I I am very proud of seeing all of you guys here trying to pursue different careers, and I will be happy to help in any way I can in your dreams in pursuing a specific career.
Woo, that was amazing. Thank you, Dr. Valderas.
Mhm.
So it looks like Joseph wanted to go ahead and chime in on something you were saying. Joseph, go for it.
Yeah. And now I have a few things that he hit on that I could actually chime in on. But no, the first thing he pointed out that I definitely like at least remember from my days in high school, which I swear wasn't as long ago as I just made it sound. But I do remember, like, you know, being a senior in high school and applying for colleges, and like a lot of my friends applying for colleges and financial aid like I was, and scholarships and all that. And these were people that I went all the way through high school with, and I thought I knew pretty well. But then when it came to applying for scholarships for college, a lot of my friends ended up being discouraged because, as it turns out, they didn't qualify for a lot of scholarships because, to my surprise, they were illegal immigrants, and I didn't know that. And at that age, I didn't really have the knowledge to know, like, what that meant. Like when I applied for a college, because it was like a Hispanic heritage scholarship or whatever, I would tell my friends like, "Oh, you're Hispanic too, you should apply for this." And then I find out that they didn't, and they were kind of reluctant to tell me why. But then once they felt more comfortable telling me about it, I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know you and your family were from Mexico, and that it's hard for your parents to get work, and hard for you to find money for college, and in turn discourage you from even wanting to go to college." So I'm glad that, like, in such a short period of time, like from my high school years to now, that there are more resources out there now for these high school students and for current college students. And it really like warms my heart, like being at UST as long as I have, seeing how diverse UST is from when I was an undergrad there over 10 years ago. um, but yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on when Dr. Valderas brought it up.
Thank you, Joseph. Yes, I think that that's a very important point, and it is true, right? So we don't know the situation of our peer students, right? So and yes, I mean, when you think that it's so simple, right? I mean, just send off your application. There are all these other details, right, that end up being a huge factor and discouraging students. I mean, the Dream Act kind of was the one who allowed at least students here in Texas, right? So as long as you could prove that you were resident in the previous 2 years, I believe you could attend um, public university, right? And and of course, with all the political debate, and of course the current administration, President Trump being a little bit hesitant in terms of allowing these dreamers to stay here, or the DACA students, etc. I mean, that's always complicated, right? One little note, Joseph, I really like your comment, and I just want to emphasize the term that you used, that sometimes, I mean, people don't like to hear when a migrant is, the term that you used was illegal, right? Because of course it has a connotation. So I rather use the term undocumented migrant. At the end of the day, is the same meaning, right? But it is less offensive, I would say. So I encourage you guys to use that term in case you have to use it, right? So refer to immigrants that are not here properly as undocumented migrants, because that's what it is. They don't have documents. And certainly there have been some avenues to help these people, because as as I said before, I mean, these are coming from honorable families, right? I mean, families that they just want to improve their situation. They are hard workers. And it's a shame, yes, that they cannot apply to college because something that actually was totally out of the control of, of the student, right? Because that was a decision that was made by the parent at that time of migrating. And then, I mean, the student somehow is tied to that. So hopefully the political climate will change and also will support this type of or the students under this status because again I think one of the basic principles is that no one that really wants to attend college or to be educated, no one should be or everyone that is interested in doing that should be allowed. It's a right that that we as citizens should have. Again, I mean that's my personal opinion. Of course, sorry, Brianna, I broke one of the rules, but
No, no, no. Like it's totally okay. Like we can discuss opinions. Honestly, I agree. Crystal, you were saying you wanted to touch on a point that was brought up.
Yes, I know Dr. Balderas mentioned this earlier about how parents want to support and everything, and they're willing to give, their child everything, the best education, the best, they're going to put them through college somehow, some way. But whenever, and this happened to me, yes, your parents are willing to be there, but whenever you're actually going through the situation, you don't have any support, and you like your parents don't understand you, and you're just like, oh my god, like you didn't go to college, like I'm going to college and this is hard and this is difficult, and you feel like sometimes they don't, it's not that they don't want to support you, it's that they don't know how. And it's, as a, I'm not a parent, but in the parent side, it'll be overwhelming because they want to make sure that you're going to be successful in life and that you get that job and that you get the better opportunity that they ever had. But they don't know because of that experience. And that's one reason why I became a teacher, especially going back or when I applied for that school, for that specific school that I went to. I wanted to be that support person for those kids because I know their parents are willing to do everything that they can, and they're talking to me and they're texting me like, hey, give them extra homework. I'm like, I'm not gonna give them extra homework, but they're like, I want them to do this. Which high school do you recommend, and things like that. But the students get frustrated and they're like, I don't picture myself in college. And that's my role as a teacher, not only to teach them Texas history stuff, but to be like, yes, you can. I did it. I came from your seat and I went to college and I'm now going to grad school. You can too. Because parents are willing to do everything, but sometimes those kids, or all of us in general, we just need that support. We need somebody to rely on, be like, hey, like, I need you, and I know you've been through what I've been through. Help me out. So that's my little spiel about that.
To follow up on that comment, Crystal, let me just add also that, well, sometimes the way that you could see the educational system here in the US is very rigid, right? Specifically in those, the early education years, right? So, and the problem here is that students, the kids, they sometimes have different personalities. They have different ways to learn, right? And because they don't fit into the traditional education system, right? Then sometimes they are relegated. They are told, well, of course, if you don't do well in high school and in middle school, how can you think about college, right? And again, this is totally false. This could be this is not true, right? Why? Because as a kid, as a person, you know, you could be a visual learner, you could be, I mean, there are so many different ways in which you learn things. And nobody can tell you that if you are not good following a very rigid and traditional educational system, that you cannot go to college and continue your education. And that's something that unfortunately I think also has affected many families, right? Why? Because we don't know what to do, right? So when they tell us in these school districts or in our schools, the public schools, hey, you know, I mean, your kid, you know, your kid has something, right? So it has ADHD, it has ADDD, it has, why? Because the kid doesn't learn as the rest of the people. And this couldn't be more false because, you know, I mean, that there are, again, different ways in which individuals can learn. So it is very, very important, right, to have the right person, the right people, the right advisor that can motivate the student. Because I think that every single person here has a gift, right? My gift might not be reading and reading and reading and reading, but I enjoy numbers, I enjoy math, right? So, but the fact that I don't read, that doesn't mean that I cannot go through a particular path. I can take a detour or, or do something to overcome with that deficiency. And that's very, very important. And that's something that if you guys, like for instance, you, Crystal, that you're a teacher, right? You are in that position of transmitting that to your students, right? And to tell them, you know, guys, don't give up, right? So we're going to try something different, and we're going to help you so you can reach that goal, which in this particular case would be getting their high school diploma or, but that's important.
Absolutely, yes. It's important.
So this kind of touches on another topic that I've sort of thought about mentioning. It's almost as if it's like a societal norm or like a specific mindset that people have sort of adapted that possibly being Hispanic can affect you in that sense. Oh, because I didn't have the best education growing up, I'm not going to be able to better myself in the future because society says I didn't have a great, education growing up, therefore I will never. So do you guys feel like there's this sort of societal norm that goes with being Hispanic and in trying to educate oneself and in trying to build a career? Do you think that affects like certain students or certain just people in general?
Yes. One of the societal norms that I see every day and um, happens often is that, oh, just because you speak Spanish doesn't mean that you understand English. Or just because you speak Spanish, you don't understand, like Dr. Bartera said, you don't understand the traditional school system, the education system, which is something that, being bilingual is an opportunity. It's a gift. It's something that everybody should embrace. And and I can understand why, and I can see this from my parents. My grandparents, they don't know how to speak Spanish, but they're trying. They try really hard to speak English, especially in public places, because of that stigma that they don't want to be ashamed that they don't know how to speak proper English. Or they're sometimes ashamed that there has to be a translator there because they, like, whenever we go to doctor's appointments, they don't want to feel like, oh, just because you speak Spanish doesn't mean that you understand everything. So that's one of the societal norms and something that I'm changing and we're all changing as Hispanics is that bilingual is a gift. It's something beautiful. It's something that we need to embrace, not shy away from.
I absolutely agree. I am very big on linguistics and like learning languages. And I always tell people the more you learn, the more adaptable you're going to be. Like being bilingual, learning Spanish, knowing French, any type of language is always a gift. And it's always something that shouldn't be taken for granted. Nor is it something that should weigh on you as a sort of negative societal norm or, I guess mindset.
Rodrigo,
So,
you want to add something, or do you
yeah,
want to?
Yes, actually, and also going back to what both of you have said, which has been fascinating. Yes, I think that, for example, in my situation, um, thankfully I had the support of my parents in the education. And there was that societal norm that, being an immigrant, being Hispanic, we were going to have it tougher. I was going to have it tougher. And despite the support and everything, there was the difficulty in that we didn't know the system completely. My parents didn't know the system of, for example, college, the process and everything. Even though my mom has, college degree in communication science in Mexico, it's completely different from here. And so she didn't really know how to go about. So we had to constantly ask counselors, we had to seek advice, and that in some way affected us because of the job of the applications would sometimes arrive late, or we didn't understand a piece of information that we needed to, that was critical for the process of the college application. So in that way, yes, it was difficult, even with the support, and we had to learn the system. And my dad, he had the idea that, that going to college was something very expensive here, that it was almost impossible. Unfortunately, he was unable to finish a college degree in Mexico because his father had been murdered, and that disrupted the whole family. So for him, it was a big struggle to see that, I could actually go to college. But my mom was insisting, and she was constantly, supporting me and trying to convince my father, no, it's not impossible. Just because we're immigrants, it doesn't mean it's impossible to go to college to finish a degree. So yes, there is a system of belief that is instilled in you uh, constantly, and I think the difficulty is trying to unlearn that belief, which is bombarded constantly uh, by society, that's being immigrant and going to college and achieving something is impossible.
Yes, absolutely, Rodrigo. I would like to add on this point, and as Crystal was saying, guys, yes, being bilingual nowadays, it's an asset, right? So you really should, first of all, not be ashamed of knowing Spanish, not being ashamed of not knowing your culture or your ancestors' culture, your parents or your grandparents, in the case you have been born in the US. And, times, of course, they have changed. There's a reason why, I mean, immigrants, when they originally came to the US, they stopped talking to their children in Spanish, right? And this was basically the discrimination, the big discrimination that they suffer when they came here. And I am not saying that discrimination is over, because we are very far from that. But back in the day, it was even more pronounced. So the rationale of the parent was I don't want my children to be bullied at school because he speaks Spanish or she speaks Spanish. So I don't want you to learn Spanish at all. I just want you to learn English, and that's the way that it's going to be. Uh, and and now you realize that there's many children of families that migrated that they don't speak Spanish, and it's a shame because that their parents they didn't want to speak Spanish to them. And well, again, it's understandable, right? But I think now times have changed. Now we have as I mentioned before, Houston is the most diverse city in the US. The percentage of people from Hispanic origin here in Houston, and not only in Houston, right? I mean, in the whole US is now huge. So speaking Spanish and understanding the culture of where we're coming from, right? All these Latin American countries, that is gonna help you later on in a potential job, right? I was talking to my freshman class in the freshman symposium class today. Early on, they went to the majors fair and then the more to explore. And I said, you guys, you really need to start thinking in complementing your major with a minor. And it doesn't matter what major you are, because if you think about it, you are going to have big chances of being more competitive later on in the labor market if you speak another language, if you understand the culture, right? So for instance, I have nursing students, and I know that the nursing program is a very complete program. You almost don't have too much room for electives. But imagine the need of bilingual nurses, right? Now, if you are in that field, right, of course, speaking Spanish is going to be a plus. But once you have decided to be a nurse, it's because you somehow you want to serve the same way as a teacher, right, like Crystal or some other position. You really want to serve to the community, right? Um, so it is important for us to understand the culture, right? And sometimes, I mean, it could be that we migrated when we were very young, or that we were born here already, and we are unfamiliar with the culture, right? I mean, yes, we eat tamales and we have the gatherings with the large families. We cook Latino food, but we don't know more than that, right? So it is important to have a better background, a better knowledge of that. Especially because first of all you have those roots, and it's important as an individual to understand your roots. Where are you coming from? Where are your parents, where are your grandparents coming from? What type of issues did they face, right? So that is important, just to precisely we're talking about the Hispanic community in the US. We really need to understand our culture first, but then because there's an opportunity to serve people, right? So in some of my advising sessions, I find people that they say, hey, Dr. Valderas, well, I am in political science. I want to do the pre-law track. And that's fine. That's great, right? So I start asking, so why do you want to do the pre-law track? What type of law do you want to practice later on? And some of them say, well, I mean, I actually want to do immigration law, right? Because I want to help all these migrants that are here, and I want to help my community. I said, well, okay, no, that's perfect. That's great, right? Why don't you complement that pre-law track or that poli science major with a Latin American studies minor, right? So you can also understand a little bit more of the culture. So you can travel and study abroad and visit one of these Latin American communities. And so that's the type of skills that will help you later on. And again, I just mentioned nursing, I mentioned law school, but this is the same if you're in the pre-med track, right? If you want to be a doctor, well, that's the same, right? So it's the medical sector. If you want to be a business in the business sector, well, guess what? I mean, there are a bunch of people there that buy stuff that are from Hispanic origin, right? So what product do you think that they're going to buy? Well, yes, American product, but also all these other products. And you need to understand the culture, right, to sell a product. So again, this is important in terms of your education to think outside of the box, and as Crystal was mentioning, to embrace that, to look at Spanish, to look at as being bilingual, to have an extra skill, an additional skill that is going to help you perform better and to give you better opportunities in the market, in the job market, right? To understand the culture. So it's important for you guys to try to do that and to, I mean, of course, I can imagine that most of you here, you speak Spanish, right? But uh, I don't know what proficiency level do you have in Spanish. Maybe a minor in Spanish, right? Or a minor in Latin American studies. Again, it doesn't have to be another major, but a minor could certainly help.
If I may I say something quick?
Yes.
Uh, yes, Spanish in my situation has helped me, especially in hard times such as these, in finding a job. Um, as a translator, for example, it has served me well, and I'm grateful that my parents taught me Spanish and we kept the language at home, despite that I grew up here in the U.S. Um, I know some people that haven't for whatever reason, but I encourage you to pick up Spanish. If you don't know Spanish, learn it well, learn how to read it, learn how to write it. It will serve you well. And if possible, get certified as a translator. You never know when you might need it in hard times. You can have your own business, be a freelance translator or interpreter. It's a great way to have your own business. And that's one of my plans, to become a certified translator through the American Translator Association. Um, and even if you don't plan that, if that's not one of your plans, it can help you understand and learn other languages. So in my case, for example, I took Polish in USTM, still continue to take Polish. There's a lot of words, ironically, that are very similar to Spanish because of Latin origin. So it can always help you. It's always useful. And I encourage you to take advantage of that and be proficient.
Absolutely, Rodrigo. Yes, I totally agree with you on that.
Same, I completely agree. I remember growing up, like I went to a very primarily Anglo like area. So I remember growing up, my grandma only ever spoke Spanish, and so I grew up speaking Spanish more than I did English, but I would speak them both. And I remember going to school and getting picked on because I would speak Spanish. So I would get frustrated and go home and tell my parents that I didn't want to speak Spanish. But in the end, ultimately, I was so beyond grateful to have had my grandma and my parents push me to not forget my roots, not forget my language, because ultimately it led me to realize my passions in life being linguistics and international studies and everything that is and comes with international studies. And so here I am today. I'm a polyglot. I speak multiple languages. I absolutely adore everything that is studying abroad and learning about new cultures and languages, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
And it's not easy, right, Brandon? Because as you were saying, I mean, you're gonna be bullied in school. You know, when you're young, that's exactly what you think. I want to block anything that brings me that potential that makes me vulnerable with my peer classmates, right? Uh, but once you pass that maturity, or once you mature, then you should realize that yes, this is an extra skill that is gonna help you. But nevertheless, of course, it's difficult, right? It's difficult because uh, still the lack of acceptance in some places that is a role, an important role. And I mean, I don't want to take sides here, but just think about if we were in the opposite side, right? So that we all always speak Spanish, and we live in a community, in a country, and then we have people coming to our country, right? That they start speaking a different language, right? We will also feel a little bit threatened, right? So again, I mean, I am not trying to justify the actions of people that would bully other kids, or that would discriminate. Uh, I, but you know, I mean, it is also something that makes them uncomfortable. And the whole idea here is that, and this is why I also believe that education that also opens your mind to be more acceptable and inclusive among different people.
Absolutely. The more education I feel people have, the more it opens their minds and the more like it broadens their views of the world. Um, and this discussion has actually taken like a really good transition into another topic I wanted to talk about, and that was, have you guys ever personally been discriminated against because of your race or your heritage in the context of education and work? As a perfect segue to this next topic.
I'm going to be very honest. I've never experienced discrimination against my race or heritage. Like I said, my whole childhood, I've been with Hispanics, elementary to high school, and then when I went to St. Thomas, I did not find or I did not experience any discrimination, which is something that I'm so thankful for because St. Thomas is so diverse. I did feel like I was left out because I wasn't with my people, but I never experienced any discrimination. And even as a teacher or in the workplace, I don't feel any discrimination. Um, it's just my own experience. I've never felt it, but I can imagine how it would feel like if I was discriminated because of my race or heritage.
I actually have faced discrimination before, although not a lot. I remember this particular incident was when I was working at Best Buy as a sales rep, and so here at Gulf Gate, where I was working at Best Buy, there was um, a lot of Spanish speakers, but there was also a lot of people who look Hispanic who didn't speak Spanish and spoke English, or they didn't want to speak Spanish. And so this particular lady, whatever reason, I just told her in Spanish, ¿La puedo ayudar en algo? Can I help you with something? I said it in Spanish. And she looked at me and she got very angry and she yelled at me in front of everybody. And she says, don't speak Spanish. We're here in the US. You're not supposed to be speaking Spanish. And I was shocked. I was, completely paralyzed. I didn't at that moment because that I've never faced an incident like that, and I wasn't expecting it here, especially here in Houston. But yeah, it happened, and it was that was thankfully it's the only incident so far that has happened. So from that incident, from that day forth, I basically would talk to a customer. I would say, "Lo puedo ayudar en algo? Can I help you with something?" So in both languages, just so they don't get offended and say, "Oh, this guy, he speaks to me in Spanish because he thinks, I don't speak English," and gets angry and starts attacking me. And it worked. Uh, I got no more customers yelling at me or anything. So that was my experience.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, sir, I think that there have been some situations, uncomfortable situations. I guess when probably some of you also have had the same experience when you are on the immigration. When you go through immigration and there's this immigration official and he sees your Mexican passport and then you're treated totally different than if you have a U.S. passport, right? Or even at work, not because you're treated differently, but also sometimes they offer you salaries or wages that are lower than white counterparts, right? Why? Because they know that you are not gonna raise your voice, or you are not gonna confront on that. And yes, that's a kind of a discrimination, right? Hard to prove, but I think that there still are. But I think what it really exists is an inequality of opportunities, right? So we don't have the same opportunities that other demographic groups have. And that is something that it is not. So I guess this is more accentuated in other countries, but now it is also happening here, right? So as Hispanics, we don't have the same type of opportunities that individuals that are not from Hispanic origin, right? And well, I mean, this has been changing, but we still have I think, a way to go. And this is why, again, education, that's important, right? That's why we really have to pursue these careers and become better and better.
I noticed some students were also commenting on this. Did any students want to share their experiences, or did any students want to chime in? Okay. To what?
I think everyone's being shy.
A little bit. It seems like it. Alrighty. I mean, to those who have experienced this type of, like, any type of discrimination, did it affect you guys in any way? Was it like something that made you really think about certain things? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Audrey. Honestly, same. I've had some of those encounters as well. But
I've
yes, like,
actually had one, and I'm not even a Spanish speaker, and I've had one just based on my skin tone, because I'm mixed. My mom's white and my dad's Hispanic, and I'm one of four, and like two of us are darker than the other two. But I did have one experience once where I was singled out based on my skin color. And it was down in the valley and near the border, by I guess, the border patrol. I'm assuming that's who they were, like the guys wearing uniforms down there. And they singled me out on a bus down there. And I felt like it was just because of my skin. And this was years ago, so I was like wearing like Hollister and stuff, and it was like very in back then. But yeah, I was singled out on the bus for identification, even though, like, you know, I was born and raised here. Even my dad, that's Hispanic, he was born and raised here. He's like at least a second or third generation himself. But yeah, so I don't even, like I said, I don't even speak Spanish. I wish I did. I unfortunately didn't grow up in a Spanish speaking household, but yeah, so it happens even if you don't speak Spanish. It's just from the way you look. And yeah, I can't help that.
Mhm.
We'd like to hear from some of the students.
I can go ahead and share a story, or I don't know. So my father is from El Salvador. My mother is from Mexico. They're both immigrants. I was the first in my family to be born here. And I grew up in Southwest Houston. I grew up in Sharpstown area. So really kind of with my people, Central Americans, stuff like that. But I ended up moving to Kingwood like a month before my freshman year of high school. So it was a big change to being in a neighborhood and a high school with mostly white students. And I didn't really find nothing too crazy happened, of course, until my senior year, which happened to be the 2016 election. So that is when I feel like and it was never anything personal, like no one ever singled me out, but as one of the only people of color, yeah, it was really rough just to see people with their Confederate flags and their Trump flags spewing, you know, all kinds of hateful things about building a wall and all of this. Yeah. So I know it wasn't really educational or like from anyone who had power over me, but it did suck that like no one in our high school administration would ever do anything about it. But yeah, but then going to St. Thomas was really nice to be again with more Latinos, Hispanics, a mixture of people. But yeah.
Going on with what Ashley said, I think the 2016 election really kind of, like, I never experienced it, but I finally realized, like, wow, just because, you know, I could potentially speak Spanish, or I could potentially, you know, I look Hispanic, you know, I'm going to experience this. And we don't really see it in Houston as much because Houston is diverse, but whenever you drive down, you know, outskirts, you know, driving down to Austin, like outside of Austin, and I just came back from Austin a month ago, you know, when you enter the town, it's like, welcome to the city of Blanco, which is like in huge letters, and even huge letters, it said like, keep America great. Trump 2020. And I was just like taken back because we live in Texas. Texas has one of the highest population of Hispanics, yet I don't know how to say this. So somebody can like, you can like jump in. I have it in my head. I just don't know how to roll it out. How, because Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas are like the only cities that are like diverse, people sometimes forget like there's the rest of Texas that are not in the same page as a diverse city. And it's kind of like a cultural shock, and that's where you experience the most discrimination when you go to those cities and you're the only Hispanic in a restaurant and they can single you out just because of the way you look. It's kind of frightening, especially after the 2016 election. That's when everything, well, for me, that's when I really, really noticed about our state as a state of Texas.
Yeah, Crystal, I don't know if this is what you were talking about, like you didn't know how to say, but like as big as like Houston, Austin, San Antonio are, people do forget like how big Texas really is. And as big as those cities are, I do think most of Texas is like the outskirts, like you're talking about. And so you get comfortable being in Houston where you're used to seeing a lot of other people that are the same skin color as you, also speak your language and everything, and you just kind of forget when you go out into the outskirts, like you said, that a lot of parts of Texas have, I don't, like, how do I say it now? I don't know how to say it. A lot of parts of Texas just have, I think, people that haven't been exposed to that kind of culture as much as we have here in the city, like Houston and San Antonio and Austin. And so I try not to hold it against them as much, just because I know they're just not as used to it. Just like how it's a culture shock for us to go out into the outskirts, I know it's a culture shock for them when they see us there, because they don't go into the city as much. So I try and remember that when I'm out in the country, because I have family that's like out there in the country in Texas, and also like in upstate New York and out there in the country too. And I've noticed that when we like go visit my family out there in New York, and a lot of times we're the only colored people in like the restaurants that we go to and stuff. So yeah.
It's kind of like going into uncharted territory. You don't know the area, even though you claim Texas as your home state and you're a native Texan. When you go outside the county lines and you're just like, wow, like I am not in Texas anymore. I am not in Houston. This is completely different. And I know I bring up teaching while I'm a teacher, but I do teach history. And one of our TEKs and our units is to cover, the Civil War, to cover slavery in Texas, to cover our political climate. It's part of our TEKs. And it's kind of, for our students, it's very shocking to see that, or to understand that Texas was the last state to release slaves. That's why we have Juneteenth. And especially when we go into our government unit and we have to show the maps of the counties, and we have to teach students what does Democratic and Republican mean, and all these terms that, it's part of our TEKs. And whenever I bring up that map of the 2016 election, where you just see Houston, San Antonio, and Dallas as blue because they voted as Democratic, and then they see the whole state of Texas as red, they're just like, wow. And they immediately associate racism and discrimination, because that's basically, because of our political climate, that's what it is now. Yeah, that's basically my thought.
Absolutely. Touching on that, and touching on Ashley's experience, how she mentioned that like after the 2016 elections, it was a complete shift in political and societal views. It almost seemed as if society was okay with allowing this discrimination and okay with allowing this racism and, because of this one man who was very open about how he felt about, certain races and ethnicities. It was just a complete shift. And I mean, same, Ashley, I had a very similar situation when I was in high school. I was singled out by a whole, like, about a quarter of my football team. They wound up, like, saying things to me, yelling at me, like cornering me in the parking lot, all because of my last name, all because of my heritage, all because of my race. And the 2016 election did spark a huge, like, shift at my personal high school because it was very American, very white. And it was, I want to say it was probably only like maybe 3% Hispanic at my school. And a lot of us experience stuff like that all because of this election. Was anybody else wanting to kind of touch up or chime in, join in on this topic still?
I guess I could add something. Well, it's not really. I haven't really been discriminated. Well, maybe I have, but I've never noticed. But my mom has. For example, one. It was actually. It was last week. Yeah, where we were waiting. Like I think we were at Starbucks, and she drives a Mercedes right now. But back then, she used to drive like a Toyota, and like no one would scratch her car or anything. But then there was this white officer next to us, like he was parked to us, like next to us, and then he like slammed his door to our door, and like he even looked at us and everything, and he didn't even say I'm sorry or anything, and he looked very mad, and I don't know like why he did that, but like when he looked at us, that was when he like slammed his door, and we couldn't really say anything because he was a cop. So we were like, I guess whatever, like we're not gonna do a lot. And yeah, that was like the first. I guess that was the first time I felt like discrimination, and like my mom has told me stories, but like I don't know. I feel like I've never really been discriminated until like I guess last week. But yeah, that's my story.
I have another one that's not really like discrimination, I guess. It's more like, I don't know, I guess funny looks, which I guess can be a form of discrimination. But like I said earlier, my mom's white. So, and my mom still brings this up to people how like I'm one of four, like I said, and when she used to like, and we're all relatively close in age. So when she used to, take us somewhere as kids where it was like just her and us, she still talks about it to this day, how she would get funny looks from people, like people think she's babysitting someone else's kids or something. Or even like today, like I still go out for lunch with my mom every now and then, and I notice people still give looks because they just are wondering like what her and I are like doing out together. Like they don't realize that she's my mom. Like just because we're two different skin tones. But like if you were around the two of us enough, you would see how much I am like my mother. I'm more like my mother than I am like my dad, actually, in terms of like personality and stuff. um, so I guess that is a form of discrimination, like I said. And it doesn't really bother me, I guess. It's just, I don't know. I guess I'm just so used to her being my mother that I don't understand the looks, Like I don't understand what they're looking at. Like I'm just out with my mom. Like
Kind of touching on that, and I'd also seen in the chat that a student had kind of mentioned this too. Being a Hispanic with a light complexion, it also comes with, like, its own discrimination in a way. Like for me, for example, some people's attitude will completely change towards me once they realize I'm Hispanic. Because I am very light complected, most people assume I'm not Hispanic. But the moment I start speaking Spanish or the moment they hear my last name, oh, it like completely shifts like their whole view, their look, everything. And I just
And
kind of sit there. Yeah.
I get when people find out I don't speak Spanish. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. I'm not even fully Hispanic. You should know that. So I get the other side of it.
Yeah, and then like basically like my entire family, my parents, my grandparents, they are all very like complected. So of course people always assume, but if you like see my family that lives in West Texas or my family that lives in Mexico, they're all very dark complected. So we're kind of like the oddballs out. But I just find it so like amazing how people shift just like that as soon as they find out one little detail about your ethnicity, about your race. Like it's crazy. All right. Anybody else wanting to chime in on this topic, or shall we move on to our what will probably be our last topic? Okay. All right. On to our last topic of this tea time. So I wanted to end on a very positive note. So what are some of your favorite cultural aspects of your heritage? Do they take on a huge role within your day-to-day life?
I guess my favorite cultural aspect of my heritage is just everything about being a Mexican American, and not more Mexican American, but just understanding that my grandparents who came from Mexico, because my mom was born here, I appreciate that so much. And I feel like as I grow older, I appreciate it even more. Like I finally understand what my culture is all about. And I don't know how to say this. Like basically, like I understand being a Hispanic person, especially here in America, and I love it. I love sharing my culture, and I think the fact that I am so open now before about being Hispanic, especially a Latina woman, that I think that's my favorite aspect, that I can finally embrace it and feel comfortable embracing it with other people, because I think it's especially hard for people like, well, I recognizing it, like I am Hispanic, but finally embracing it and raising it to other people and understanding, the heritage and understanding. And I teach social studies, so like the history behind of it, especially how Texas was once part of Mexico and all that stuff. I mean, I'm still giddy about it every time when I go to Mexico and we visit these historical sites in Mexico, and even here in Texas, like the Spanish missions and just like things like that. It's because of the Hispanic heritage. Things, yeah. So basically that.
Well, some of my favorite aspects of my heritage are the family, the concept of family, the fact that Hispanic culture tends to be more family oriented, in the sense that, for example, my parents tell me, it's okay if you want to live with us while, you achieve stability, that's fine. There's no pressure for you to leave as soon as possible. There's this support. There's, you're always going to be our son forever. That's not going to change. So if you need anything, we're here for you. And I think that's an aspect of Hispanic culture that I really enjoy, that I like about that. The support, the family support. And of course, the Spanish language. Enjoy specifically the dichos, the sayings, especially, it's things that you really can't translate into another language, into English, for example, and it's, you know, wisdom that has been handed down through generations to generation. And that's something I really enjoy, you know, both of those aspects of my culture.
For me, I guess, well, every day, you know, it's the food. I always eat something Mexican at home. I, of course, speak Spanish at home. I listen to music, to music in Spanish. My children do that as well. And I always keep in mind all the important dates, a little bit of history of Mexico in my case, right? But as Crystal was saying, I think being proud of being from Hispanic or Latino origin, and also teaching that to our children, right? So to also be proud of being Hispanic, because although all of them have they were born here in the U.S. Well, they have those Hispanic roots as well.
Yes, that was, yes, I completely agree. All great points. And with that, I feel like this is a great way to wrap everything up. We left on a really great note. It was so amazing to have all of these speakers here with us today. Thank you again for agreeing to be part of our panel. And thank you so, so much to all of the students that have tuned in today. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, we are campus community. If you want to go ahead and contact us or get our information, please let us know. We will be happy to reach out to you guys. And thank you. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you, Brianna,
Thank you,
and thank you
Brianna.
all of you guys. Rodrigo, good to
Thank
see
you
you.
all.
Crystal, also great to share the panel with you guys. And thank you to all the students for organizing this and for being part of it.